I was 15 years old and I had a friend that actually committed suicide. But when I lost my friend, honestly, she was a happy person to meet. Like on the outside, it looked like everything was perfect.
Why do you think there is such a general misconception about mental health?
We're just prescribing to symptoms, and that's the thing about mental health is we don't really get to the root of a lot of things.
To help students open a discussion on their mental health, Jared Scott started his journey as a public speaker at just 15 years old. Using music along with his school presentations, he has helped many kids across the nation take the first steps in talking about their problems.
And sometimes those schools, like everybody is just hating on each other, and all it takes is a 45-minute presentation, just shift their perspective to that they're a community. The kids are just like, whoa, I have never thought about it that way.
So let's dive a little further and see why Jared is a real American game changer. First and foremost, Jared Scott, thank you so much for coming on to the Epoch Times and the American Game Changer show. Tell me a little bit, how did you first start becoming a public speaker in regards to mental health?
Most things I tell people start in tragedy. They just do. Like your purpose in life usually starts at a low moment in your life. And it was the same thing for me. When I was in high school, I was 15 years old and I had a friend that actually committed suicide. And it was because of bullying. And it was because of actually at that time, cyberbullying it was like when Facebook and Instagram at first kind of started up and everybody was having to deal with, the rise of anxiety coming with the rise of social media and having to kind of navigate through these new, platforms. We didn't know what to do or how to handle it. And the adults didn't know how to talk to us about it. And so when I lost my friend, honestly, she was a happy person to meet. Like on the outside, it looked like everything was perfect. But on the inside, she must have been going through a lot, but we didn't know who to ask her. So it was the first time in my life that I realized that people are pretending, that a lot of people wear a mask. They wear a fake smile, not a COVID mask, but like a fake smile. And I wore it too, but I thought I was the only one. And when that happened to my friend, and I realized that if she could wear that mask, that fake smile, and nobody noticed, then I think maybe everybody's wearing one. And so at that moment in my life, I was like, I have to do something about this. Because growing up here in Midland, Texas, where I'm at right now, in 1 year, bro, we had over 20 suicide attempts in kids in high school around my age, over 20. And it seemed like nobody wanted to talk about it. I mean, if you tried to talk about it, it was getting answers like you need a job, stay busy, play more sports, or like just literally distract yourself was the answers that we were getting from the adults. That was it. So at the time I made music. So I was working in a local studio, and the way that I expressed my emotions was I put my emotions into music. I wrote a song, I put it on YouTube, iTunes, and that's how I would talk to somebody because I was shy, remember? So I couldn't do it in person. So I did it through music. So I told my friend, hey, let's put together a song, and we're going to take this song and we're going to take it to the schools and we're going to rap to kids. And this is how we're going to speak to kids. I'm going to use music. And so we did that. And I was 15 years old the first time that we did it. We went to a school here in Midland and we spoke, and a globetrotter, his name was Melvin Ass, was also speaking that day. And he saw me speak. And I'll be honest with you, he told me I was terrible. He was like, dude, you're a terrible speaker. He's like, but I like your song. So he's like, every time I come through Texas, I want you to come with me and I'm going to take you on the road with me around our Texas tour. And I'm going to teach you how to speak to kids. So I did that. At one point I was going to the schools because I loved music and I wanted to rap and I wanted to share my song with the kids. And then at one point it was like, dude, you're going to be a counselor and you have to have better answers. And so then I went back to school for psychology and childhood development and decided, you know what, music's like the hobby now. Let's be a speaker. Let's change lives. Let's be a counselor. And once I decided that, I was around 21 years old. And I've never really looked back. At that same year, my son was born and everything. So it just seemed like the right thing to do. I wasn't chasing that rapper dream anymore. I had shifted my perspective and my goals to being a psychologist and a counselor and just a mentor really to the youth.
Yeah. So you touched on it a little bit and about how there's such kind of, in so many ways, a misconception when it comes to mental health and how to handle it, how to deal with it. Why do you think there is such a general misconception about mental health and ways to deal with it?
I think honestly, it's because you can't see it. And, seeing is believing for a lot of people. It's hard for a lot of people to have faith in things that they can't see, or to even believe in that they're real. And that's what I've just seen amongst the older generations when I talk to even my own grandparents about mental health. They couldn't see it, so they didn't think about it. It didn't physically manifest in real life until it was almost too late. And that's what I tell people is you can see mental health, you can see it when it's too late and we're having a memorial for somebody that lost their life. That is the manifestation of mental health that was put to the side. It's bad mental health practices and things that, the distractions and the medications and things. And I'm not against medication, don't get me wrong about that, but I do think a lot of them are overprescribed, and we're just prescribing to symptoms. And that's the thing about mental health is we don't really get to the root of a lot of things. We're just trying to move on as fast as possible. But if you relate mental health to physical health, if somebody walked into your office right there and they had a broken leg or a cast or something, you would be asking if you could, like carry things for them, help them in any way possible. You'd be asking how it happened, how they're dealing with it. But people walk in every single day with a broken brain. Their mental health is in shambles, and nobody asks if they're okay. Nobody's asking, can we help you? What's going on? And that's just the beginning. That's just the starting point. So yeah, if you think about mental health versus physical health, bro, we have put so much emphasis on physical health, and mental health is just as important.
There should be some importance on both. And we talk about going to the gym every day. We talk about lifting weights and getting swole, but we don't talk about, did we take 5 minutes, maybe 20 minutes to get my mind right, and get me in the,
Exactly.
the mental state that to take on a lot of this stuff.
If we took away the football program from a school, there would be riots in the
Yep.
streets. You know what I'm saying? Like if we took away athletics, parents would be at the school doors marching, bro. Like they'd be so upset. And yet we don't even have a mental health class. you know like we don't even have the class. It hasn't even been important enough for so long that we don't even have a 45-minute period a day dedicated to it, yet we use our brains for everything. So it's really backwards and really insane. I tell people, if it's not important, then you could do without it, but I would rather lose everything I have than to lose my mind.
Right.
It's actually the most important thing that I have. Without there's no me. So it's the most important thing and looked at the least. It is crazy.
Yeah, and it's so true, and it's like but I feel like there has been kind of a shift. I think in
Oh,
the last
definitely.
couple of years, there's more people focusing and kind of going into the mental health sphere. Tell me
Mhm.
about your travels and you kind of getting into speaking at schools, and what's that like being able to go out there and speak to so many different kids across the country?
So traveling has given me the ability to be able to, or the opportunity really, to be able to get close to a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and just see their perspective of life. And that has not only helped me, it's helped them, it helps us. And I see in some places where mental health is put as very important, and they actually have higher test scores. I mean, the kids are happier. They're like, I go some places where I'm the first speaker they've ever had, and sometimes those schools, like everybody is just hating on each other, and all it takes is a 45-minute presentation, just shift their perspective to that they're a community, and every single thing that they do to each other makes an impact on the people around them, and that they're busy fighting against each other when there's so much more that they could do if they did it together. And just that little shift of perspective, the kids are just like, whoa, I have never thought about it that way. But it's because it's never been presented to them that way. I know there's so many kids out there that all they needed was somebody to say, hey, your feelings matter. Like, hey, you're not alone. Like that's all they needed. Hey, I want to talk. Do you want to talk? There's kids out there, people out there, adults out there that have just been waiting for those lines right there. Hey, I'm here if you need to talk. Bam, you could save somebody's life. Like it is that, it's that easy, you
Do you
know?
think that is a long-term solution? A lot of the let's talk about it. Let's find, do you think that is a solution in a way that we can bring down? Do you think that, I agree with you. I love those NFL commercials. I think they're super impactful. But do you think that ultimately can really make a drastic impact?
So, like, yes and no, because I see it as the very first step, right?
Right.
So, like, we're coming up with a better map of what you have to do. And so, for normal people that have a regular job and everything else, that's why it's so hard for people to get in shape. It's because they say they don't have time, right? Or they don't know what to do. They're like, well, can you send me the diet plan? Can you send me the exercise plan? They need a plan. So I
Right.
feel like that's what we're doing on the mental health side of things. We're at step number one, which is, hey, let's at least start having the conversation. But step number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are going to need to be mapped out and made a plan. And that's what we try to do when we go to schools. Like, I don't just go and do a 45-minute assembly. That's just step number one. That's just where we start the conversation. But then we do a 2 to 3 hour program afterwards called a leadership summit, where we actually go through an action plan on what their problems are at school and at home. And then we work with them, a guided discussion and group work, to actually come up with real solutions, personalized solutions of what they can do and how they can continue the work that we started.
So you travel a lot, you talk to a lot of young people, you talk to the next generation. What are some things that you feel that the next generation fears? And what are some things that you feel like they have a lot of hope in?
Definitely the fear part of it is the future in general. I know that may not sound crazy. I don't know. But like, kids are connected to everything. And I remember back, I don't know, maybe 2018, 19-ish time, just watching news pop up on their iPhone, Apple Watch, just the most horrific headlines ever you could ever imagine. Like, something about North Korea or something, and the bombing, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, just crazy stuff. And I'll never forget that, because one day there was a kid that his biggest fear in life was that we were going to go to war with North Korea. And he was a sixth grader. And I mean, this was like crippling anxiety to him. Like, I mean, he was crying in front of me about this. And at that moment, I realized, because these are the type of headlines he's reading every single day. This is a reality that he lives in. He thinks like any second we're about to go into the next world war, And that's when I realized, like, social media and being connected to everything, like, these kids are so disconnected from their real life. Like, he couldn't get, his grades were suffering. Like, he couldn't operate in everyday life because he was operating out of fear every single day because of social media. And that's when I realized, like, social media is a big deal to these kids. Every single kid that I talk to, social media is a huge chunk of their anxiety. It's a big problem for their identity. They watch people live, 60% of their day is on their phone. Like, no joke. When I see these kids' screen times, because I've kind of done little experiments myself. Like, when I go out there, I'll look at their screen time. I'm like, hey, you mind if I look at your screen time afterwards when we're talking? Some kids spend 8-9 hours a day on social media average, So, that's 60% of your life watching somebody else live their lives. How are you going to get to know yourself? So I would say that that's their biggest fear, is the identity and the future and what they're supposed to do in life, because they have so many options. As crazy as that sounds, I know,
Yeah.
like, my grandparents were like, it must be great to grow up in this time. There's so many things you could do. Like, there's always a upside and there's a downside to everything. There always is. So it's great that you could literally do whatever you want. But what if you just coast through life thinking, what if, in a sea of uncertainty, you're just drowning? Like, they never really get anything done and they don't know who they are. That's the
No.
biggest thing that I've noticed. 16, 17, 18-year-olds, 10 years ago, when I started doing this, kids knew what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Now kids have no idea.
So, social media is playing such a interesting aspect in society right now. It's for sure. I was just reading an article, just before this interview, about just how mental health has basically become a crisis and has basically gotten even bigger during COVID. What's your thoughts in regards to mental health and what's going on with mental health with young people and during this time of COVID?
So what COVID did was it made everybody stay home, and it made everybody, stop distracting themselves for a little bit, and they had to live with their thoughts. They had to actually analyze their thought patterns and their life, and they had to live live with that. And they realize, for a lot of people realize, oh my gosh, my mental health is terrible. Like I'm not happy. Like it's like I'm only happy if I have something to do. I'm only happy if I have this job. They didn't have happiness or any joy in their life outside of their profession or maybe their friends. Like without their friends they weren't happy. Like there was a lot of people, you need to learn how to be happy with yourself. And even me, somebody that speaks about mental health, when the pandemic happened and they were like, no more traveling, no more speaking to people, I was kind of panicking. I was kind of freaking out. And then I realized my son was having a great time. He was having the time of his life. He was running around the house happy as could be. And it's because his perspective was different. His perspective was his dad didn't have to travel anymore. I could stay home. I could get closer to him as a father. We could play more. So his perspective was different. So I use that story to tell kids how to shift their perspective to other people's perspective and gain empathy. And I got closer to my son. And, my perspective was the world was ending outside. My job is ending, all this stuff. It was causing the panic and the anxiety, the uncertainty in my life. But I shifted my perspective and I got closer. I got closer to my wife. I became a better husband. We got closer as a family during COVID. We controlled the things that we could control that were in our control, because you can't always control the overall situation. You can only control your reaction to the situation. So that's what COVID taught me about mental health and how important it is that I shift my perspective, pick out the parts that are in my control, and I control those. And everything else that's out of my control, I have to just control my reaction. And that is a responsibility of ours, is to control our reactions. If we get good at controlling our reactions, we really control our reality.
Perspective is huge. If we can get more people with a better perspective of what's going on and about mental health, I think it'll make a drastic change. If someone, and in some sense, people are looking at this as like a fight of how do we drastically change mental health in this country? And that's maybe a big, broad question, but how do we change mental health across the board in America?
So what I think is, as the focus shifts and people start to be interested in our brains and how our brains work, and psychology and neurology and all these things, as there are plenty of people in the younger generations nowadays going to be psychologists and counselors and stuff like that, that whole industry as a whole is becoming the shift, and so many people are going in that direction. Like personally, I'm actually not worried about it. I talk to so many kids in high school nowadays that, they're so interested in psychology. They're so interested in counseling. And I know that there's a wave, a whole generation of counselors and psychologists and neurologists and all these people that are going to change the narrative. They're going to change the story. They're going to come up with the action plans that we need. And I really think that we're just on the brink, man. I'm honestly I'm not sitting back and watching it. I want to be a part of it. So, I'm still going to school. I'm still learning. I'm reading as much as I can. And I won't ever stop that. I'm going to continue that direction. And I think if I could just get people to get on my side that are interested, like if you have an interest in mental health, like I just challenge people to go for it, man. Like actually go out there and gain as much knowledge as you can. I know a lot of people nowadays are kind of anti-school and stuff. And that's just, I used to be that kid, but if it's something that you're interested in, like knowledge is power, and anybody that has the interest in their emotions or their mind or mental health, which honestly should be everybody, like I challenge you to learn about yourself, learn about your mind. If we all did that and we took care of our own minds, like that's how we would shift the entire planet. Like that's how everything would change, is we just take responsibility for our thoughts, right?
100%. I agree. If we can inspire more people to just want to do more, to look at it, and imagine you with what you're doing, you inspire 100 people that become psychology or counselors, or thousands of them. That drastically can change, just everything in regards to mental health.
Bro, and there's YouTube University. I tell kids all the time, like, you don't have to have a bunch of money to go to
Right.
school. Like
100%.
I learned so much, even in my school classes that I do online. Like they send me YouTube videos to watch and TED Talks to watch. And I find people that are doing things in life that I admire them and inspired by. And I follow my dreams in real life, and I follow my dreams on social media. I follow the same type of people. Like that's the main message that I try to get to kids nowadays is they end up in places in life where like, how'd I get here? And it's like, look at who you followed. You
Right.
know, that's how
100%.
you got there. Like analyze your engagements in real life and analyze them online. If you're depressed, like it's not just if you're depressed, like you go to counseling to manage your mind. Like manage means along the way. Like we don't just go to the gym just when we're out of shape, bro. You got to go to the gym to stay in shape. Like that's the same thing with counseling or doing something, mindfulness and everything and practicing that. It needs to be every single day, you know, and it's not something to be ashamed of at all, you know.
Yeah, and I think that there's kind of like a stigma on going to see a counselor, right? We need to
Like,
get to a point
oh,
where, yeah, we need to get to the point where going to counselor is just like going to the gym. Talking to someone about your mental state is just like going to the gym, doing a quick workout, and it should be no different in so many ways of going to Lifetime 24-hour fitness as going to see someone that is like trained in mental health.
and you could probably vouch for this. Like if you're hiring somebody's coming to a job interview and they're like they go to the gym. They talk about how, hey, every morning 6 a.m. I got to go to the gym. I can be here at 7, blah, blah, blah. I do this every single day. That discipline alone and seeing that they're in shape, like you're like, okay, they actually walk what they talk and they talk what they walk. They're doing what they say they're going to do. They're disciplined. Like that means I can count on them, right? It's the same thing, bro. If somebody wants to come work with me or work for me and they're like, I have counseling that I go to on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at this time, it's going to like back in the old day. If I would have told my grandparents that I'm trying to work for them, they'd think I'm crazy. Like, okay, well, he's crazy, so I'm not hiring him, right? But nowadays, like I'm like, okay, this person is working on their mental health. They're going to be a more peaceful, sound-minded person. Like that discipline alone is why I'm going to hire this person versus somebody else because they are going to counseling. Like it was all backwards, and that's how a lot of things work, bro. Is we start off one way and then we realize, oh, we were doing that completely wrong, and we flip the script, and then the narrative just takes a little bit of time to flip with it.
No, I 100% agree, and there totally is a kind of a switch. So I saw that you are very involved in music. I saw that you kind of did some music videos and
Oh
wrote
yeah.
some rap and stuff. So tell me a little bit about your music career, and I see that's kind of joint into what you're doing with your public speaking and with mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working on a CD for about a year and a half right now that
Oh wow.
hopefully I'll put out in like a month or so. I'm still finishing it up on it right now.
Do you have a name for the album yet?
It's called Far From the Truth,
Okay.
actually. Okay, so it's actually the cool part is it's a lot of stories of students that I've heard on the road
Wow.
that have given me permission to tell their stories. And so their stories are kind of compiled into different songs. So it's very relatable, and it's going to be one of those things that when you hear it, you're going to be like, "Oh, that's me," on one song, and somebody else says the same on the others, because it's so many different stories of kids that I've met all over the United States from different backgrounds compiled into this music piece. So it's going to be very like that was the whole point of the story is the you're not alone, So that's the whole point of this, album is to really relate to the younger generations and the youth and what they're going through. And then for the adults that listen to this, you get some kind of insight into what kids are dealing with and what they're going through. And what I tell people, it's like it's a bridge, and the bridge is called listening, and the other side that we're trying to reach is called understanding. And so this CD is just my way of expressing that. Like I told you earlier, music is my way of putting my emotions out there to people, talking about my feelings. And I think it just comes across in a more relatable way because everybody listens to music, whether they know it or not, they listen to relate. When you hear a song, whether you're going through something, it reminds you of a time, a person, or whatever. Good music captures a moment in time. When you feel good when you listen to a song, it's because you feel like you're not alone. It's because you relate to that artist, you relate to what's going on in that song. And so I feel like music is powerful. I know people say music's like medicine, but just full disclaimer, music can also become a distraction, right? We don't deal with our problems either. And I tell kids that too. I'm like, it's great that you listen to the song, that you related to it. But once you relate to it, it's time to take that next step and let's do
Right.
something about it, right? It's the same thing with the commercial, right? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not alone. But now what? Like
Right.
we got to keep going. We got to keep learning. But Yeah, music's just become like just the it just enhances the experience that I have at schools with kids or in programs that I do. It just enhances it because it's a piece of the program that they get to take home with them and they can listen to anytime. And it's just, it's not, I wouldn't say disguised in music, but it is just, it's softened. So it's not so in your face. It's just relatable stories. So I feel like, when they can take that home and play it on a bad day, it reminds them that they have a story and that their story is valid. It reminds them that they're not alone, and it reminds them that everything's going to play out the way it's supposed to be, whatever that may be for them. And that's what the story is about, to be completely honest.
Well, I completely agree. I think music can be such a huge way and such like, and again, like we were saying, like the commercial, it could be the first step in so many ways of like opening your eyes, being re-inspired. So really appreciate it. Really appreciate you stopping by and talking with us. One last final plug of anything where you're going to be out, when your album's going to drop and everything else.
Yeah, so I wish I was one of those dudes that had like the actual date and stuff. But since music's like a hobby to me and I'm a perfectionist, I'm like, hey, I'm finishing up the last of it this month, and then I'll put it out probably February, mid-February. But if you follow me on at Jared Scott Live on Instagram, I'll for sure be drowning my followers in music plugs for the month after I dropped that CD. Because I worked really hard on this one. I've never worked so hard and long on a CD before. And it's never meant so much to me because it's not my story. It's the story of so many kids that they have amazing stories, but they are just too scared to tell it themselves, and they needed some help. So this is that. And I know that these kids are going to listen to these songs and it's going to mean the world to them. And that alone makes the whole CD worth it. Just knowing that these kids they feel like their story is being told. And not only that, their story is going to relate to thousands of people. And that alone saves people's lives.
100%. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Thank you again, Jared. Really appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother.